Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Laurel Ann, and today I'm doing a wrap up of all the books I read in March and April. From here on out, I really want to do monthly wrap ups instead of this like semi-monthly thing I've been doing, but the end of March and all of April were just really crazy for me because I was finishing my master's thesis and then I went traveling a lot, so I just really didn't get the chance to film a video in all of April. So this is what we're doing for now. I'm sure you're not complaining. I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping about how this channel is going to work in the future, I suppose. Right, so the first book I read in March was Nevermoor, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the first in a series of middle grade fantasy books, and it's about Morrigan Crow, who is cursed to die on her 11th birthday. And then the day comes when she's going to kick the bucket, and this kooky redheaded guy shows up and tells her that she's been selected to be his candidate for the society that he's in, which I can't recall the name of right now. It's the Wondrous Society. Yep, I remembered. And so he whisks her away to another world, and she doesn't die, and she discovers that she needs to take part in 3 different trials in order to be approved as a member of the Wondrous Society. I listened to the audiobook, and it was narrated by the woman who plays Yara Greyjoy in Game of Thrones, and she was amazing. Like, so good. This is one that a lot of people are comparing to Harry Potter, not so much in plot, but just sort of in vibe, I guess, and how it makes you feel when you read it. And I can definitely see that a little bit. It really did make me feel like a kid again. It's a lot kookier than Harry Potter. So if you're not really into like children's literature, I don't really think that this is gonna be your favorite thing. I really liked it. I thought it was extremely charming. All the characters are good fun, but yeah, it's definitely wacky. At the same time though, there are some themes that are appropriate for adult readers, like discrimination and embracing your differences. I'd definitely recommend this if you've heard about it and are curious and are looking for something that's fun and easy to read. It might be a great thing to take on vacation with you if you're not really good at reading while you're traveling, which is something that I can say about myself. Just, yeah, don't expect it to be Harry Potter, I would say. And the next book I read was My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, which has since been shortlisted for the Women's Prize. This is a really short book. I read it almost in one sitting. Really, really enjoyable reading experience. This is about Yejide, a Nigerian woman who works in a hospital, and her extremely beautiful and well-loved sister Ayola, who over the last few years has ended up with 3 dead boyfriends. After the 3rd one, Corday is beginning to wonder if these deaths really are accidents or the result of self-defense, as Ayola has claimed. Nonetheless, she has been the one to help her cover up all of these deaths. But when Ayola starts seeing a man who Corday has very strong feelings for, her loyalties begin to be tested. On top of being a really fun read, I think it does have something more to it. For one thing, the relationship between the sisters is really, really well drawn. I thought that that was so masterfully done. Corday has always been a little bit jealous of her sister's beauty and the attention that she gets from men and women, and yet she still is willing to go to the ends of the earth for her sister. Something else that I thought was really, really well done is that underneath the general darkness of the sort of thrillery serial killer plot is a thread of the danger that these women face every single day as they live their lives in their society. And I thought that was really interesting and definitely elevated this book for me. Alright, so I guess after Nevermoor, I was really feeling in the mood for some more middle grade fantasy, so I read Tilly and the Bookwanderers by Anna James, which is about 11-year-old Tilly, who lives in her grandparents' bookstore, Pages & Co. And one day, Tilly starts to see characters from her favorite books around the bookstore, and it turns out that both she and her grandparents have a gift that allows them to travel within storybooks. So, of course, Tilly and her best friends go on adventures through several books, and they find that maybe some of the people they meet aren't exactly what they seem. This book is very, very sweet. Definitely a nice, like, cozy read on the couch by the fire kind of read, and reminded me of kind of what it's like to be a kid in love with books and how strongly you can really feel about those stories at that time. This also has really nice representation because Tilly's best friend is dyslexic, and yet he still loves reading and is able to read in this passionate way that allows you to book wander. So I thought that was a nice little touch. My next book was Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, which has been praised to the moon, and I'm just gonna throw onto the pile of praise because this book was incredible. Oh, it's so small and has such strong, tight theming and message. Oh, genius. It's genius. I am not over the fact that it was not shortlisted for the Women's Prize. I think that that is a mistake. So if you somehow haven't heard yet, Ghost Wall is about 16-year-old Sylvie who goes with her mother and father to an experimental archaeology project in Northumberland where they are essentially trying to live like Iron Age people would have. I actually read this on a trip to Northumberland, and I had this like really grand plan to make a reading vlog of it with, you know, shots of the beautiful Northumberland landscape while I read the book. And this was the only footage that I took. So honestly, for such a small book, there's just so much inside. Sylvie's father in the book is a very difficult man who is abusive to both her and her mother. And he really strongly believes in a time when men are unquestionably the dominant sex over women. But it's also really well done in that you do see that Sylvie still loves him and that they still share good times, which makes it even more difficult to overcome the abuse or to report the abuse. There's also a lot about nostalgia and racism and immigration and educational elitism. The book is set in like 1997, I think. That just adds like another level to the like nostalgia theme. Like it's set in a time that a lot of people are really nostalgic for today, while Sylvie's father is really nostalgic for an earlier time. And so it's just sort of a comment, I guess, on the on that kind of mentality of like wishing for a past time. Anyway, read this book, please. Ugh. So next I read this one, which is the only physical copy I have because everything else was from the library, and I had to return them. So this is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, or 7.5, because this is an American edition, and I guess they had some copyright problems. I don't know. This is another one that's kind of been everywhere. It's about this guy who wakes up with no memory of his past or who he is or anything, except he has one name in his head, Anna. And through the day he discovers that a woman named Evelyn Hardcastle is going to be murdered by the end of the day, and he has 7 days to solve the murder. And each of these 7 days he will be waking up in a different person's body. I was so ready to love this. I thought the premise sounded really intriguing, sort of an Agatha Christie setting, but with this like sci-fi Groundhog Day element. And for the first like third, I would say I was really appreciating it, but I just in the end found this book extremely frustrating to the point where I considered doing a standalone video for it, because I just have so many things to say that I can't really say in this video because they'll be spoilers. But I can give you like a brief rundown of why this book bugged me. For one thing, one of the characters that the protagonist ends up inside is a fat man, and the description of this man's body was just so uncomfortable for me to read. It just reeked so much of fat phobia, and I know that like a character's views don't necessarily reflect the author, but I just thought it was completely unnecessary. And also, let's talk about how I swear I've seen this in so many books before. Anytime there's someone fat, we hear about like his penis dangling from beneath the rolls of fat. Like, come on. We didn't hear about any other character's penis. And by the way, they do all have penises because not once in 7 bodies does he get reincarnated or whatever into a woman. So that was annoying to me as well. There's also pretty much just one female character in the book, and I can't go too deeply into it without spoiling anything, but her characterization just comes off as very shallow and poorly thought through, in my opinion. So that's just another point against it. Anyway, I know I sound really impassioned, like I totally hated this book, and honestly, when I was reading it, it wasn't that strong hatred. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, like we're doing this again, over and over again the same day. And it's one that, like, as I've gotten farther away from it, I've just disliked it more. The premise is very clever though. If you like this book, I don't think you're dumb, but it's just, you know, it's not my fave. The next book I read was Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. This is about a college student named Frances and her best friend Bobby, who are budding spoken word poets, and they befriend an older woman who is a famous writer and her husband. Now, this apparently was inspired by the Greta Gerwig movie Frances Ha, and I can definitely see the influence. This really isn't plot driven at all. It's more just an up close and personal view of the relationship between these 4 characters. Frances is a really fascinating character. She is kind of detestable. She makes terrible decisions, but I also, to be honest, saw a lot of my 21-year-old self in her. I think that the way she handles the situations that she's in the story are almost exactly how I would have handled them if I had been there at that time. I'm just really, really impressed with Sally Rooney's insight into the human psyche and the way she draws relationships. I loved it, and I pretty much immediately after finishing it went out and bought the other one, Normal People, and I'm really, really excited to read that because everyone says it's even better than Conversations with Friends, but I actually have a hard time seeing how I'm gonna love it more. Like, I think I loved Conversations with Friends more than most people. And the last book I read in April was Women Talking by Miriam Toews. This is inspired by the true story of a Mennonite colony in Bolivia that in 2011 it was discovered that the women in the community had been being drugged with animal tranquilizers and raped by 7 men in the community. And what Miriam Toews has done here is sort of try and jump into the heads of these women and see how they would be feeling at this time, having discovered that these events took place. So the book opens with all of the men having left the colony to go into town to sell animals to get bail money so that they can bring the rapists back to be forgiven by the women. The women obviously aren't totally thrilled with this, so they are having a conversation to decide what they should do. The options are stay and fight or leave. So the whole book essentially is just a 3-day conversation between the women. So if you're somebody who really cares about plot, you're not going to get it in this book, but you are going to get a really heart-wrenching and yet also funny tale of the pain of women. One critique I have seen about this is that the narrator of the book is actually a man named August who was actually shunned from the community and has re-entered, and he's been asked by one of the women, Una, to take notes on the meeting. So some people have definitely said if you're writing a book about like women's liberation, why should it be narrated by a man? And I do get that. I think it's a valid criticism, but I think it's really well done in this case because he has a view of the outside world that the women don't have, and so he can add some context, I guess, for the things that they say. And also, part of the reason that the women are in the situation they're in is that the men in their lives didn't listen to them. And August is a really great example of what happens when men do listen to women, or just when the people in power listen to the people who are marginalized, because his experience of taking notes for this meeting ended up really completely changing his life. This book was heartbreaking and yet so compelling. I think this is one of the most important books I've read this year. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, especially knowing that it's kind of true is just, kind of difficult to face. Okay, this video is all over the damn place. I'm just gonna stop talking now. If you liked this, I'd like it if you subscribed, but I'd like it even more if you commented because I would love to talk about these books with you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again some other time. Bye! I need to do better.